Hello, this is Jack Burney, and this is my submission for assignment 2 in system programming. I'm just using the web portal for No Machine. Here's my ID, Burney482. I'll get straight into it. Here's the first function or file. Just using fgets. So here it's pretty much just defining an arbitrary sized buffer here of characters. And it's pretty much taking it in that size of input from the input file one at a time until it reaches the end, which is null in this case because it's fgets. And every time it takes it, it pushes that into the output file. So if I do this, now if I run here, you'll see when no file is put in, functions like normal. Now, if there is a file, worth mentioning, I have a demo file, two of them, both called test1 and test2 respectively, and they have the same content, both have 1, 2, 3. So here, if I put in this, prints it out just as it should. All right. Now moving on to the next question, which is jpq2.c. You'll see here it is just the same, but in this case, we are using fread. Now, this looks complex, but in reality, it really isn't. It's saying here, define like the character distance and make an arbitrary buffer called string. So here, what it's saying is read from the put into the buffer string in increments of 1 because that's the size of a character, so it's character by character, the size of string, and do that from the input file until you reach 0. So what this means is until there's nothing left incrementing, so the character distance is 0, keep going. Now, every time it takes in a buffer, here it's saying for the size of that buffer, the distance here, for that size, put every character within it, so increment within it, into the output file. So to recap, take a buffer, loop through it one by one, putting in every character into the output file, one by one, and redo that until you reach 0. So now I will compile that, and that will look like this. Now, you'll see functions just the same. And if I put in the demo page, which is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right, moving on, we have here the next question. Now, this is using system calls, so fundamentally it's a bit different. First and foremost, we are no longer using the file pointer. We're defining by integers. And we are also using standard input file no, or standard out file no. We have to open the file manually, and this is just saying read only. and defining as FP as above. Now, once we open it, we also want to make sure that it can be opened. And if it can't, well then here it's just saying write out to the output, so to terminal, cannot open. And that's just the size of the string being printed out. Can't forget to close it. Here we have the actual function, arbitrary buffer size, signed size, arbitrary n. So until n is less than 0, read from the input file the buffer and the size of buffer, take that, and then write it within the output file, the the thing right here, n, which is the saved read content from the input in the size of the buffer. It also writes in the size of the buffer. So if I go here, this is 3. JBQ3. JBQ3. So you can see here, functions like normal if there's no file input. Now, if I were to have a file input, which I'll use my text with 1, 2, 3, boom, works just as advertised. Now, moving on to the next. Now, this is a different question. What this is asking for is, could you, sorry, I just want to make sure this is the right one. Yes. Yes, so this is the one that reverses. Okay. So, where are we? Here we are. All right. So from the top, we define the max lines that could be input and the max length of like a string, so per line, just to make things easier. We also define within the, by the way, this function, it takes in an input file and the output file. The input file will be reversed and written to the output file. So here it is taking in the first argument, second argument for what they respectively will be. Then here it's opening the input file with read-only permissions and saying that there is the lines or creating an array called lines. That's the size of the max number of lines. Also a count starting at 0 and a buffer with the max length per line. So here it's saying while, and this is just taking in from the buffer the input, which is the opened file, the length, so that's the size, is the string length of the buffer plus 1 because it's null terminated. Now putting, this is just for memory allocation, dynamic memory allocation, and it is copying the lines by the size of the count in the buffer, and then it's incrementing every time. So with this, effectively, this is just a condition in case it goes past the max lines. Now it closes. So essentially what this did is it wrote into an array each line separately. Now here, or it closes it by the way. Now here it opens the output file with the permissioned write. Now going from reverse order of the array, it will then output the indexed item, so that'd be each line, and then it frees that, so make sure it's memory safe. and then close the output. So to elaborate, that means if I have lines 1, 2, 3, it'll go in reverse order of that array, printing out 3, then 2, then 1. Now, if I were to compile this, then run it. Oh, that's right. I have to have the input and output. So I will have a input that's 1, 2, 3, and then I'll just put that into a new file called output.txt. Okay, so let's see if that worked. I will cat output.txt. You'll see it's 3, 2, 1, whereas test 1 is 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Now moving on, we have the last question. All right, so what this is asking is to pretty much append files to each other and then print out the final item. So it'll take in an arbitrary amount of files, and the last file will be the output file. So here is trying to find that output file by looking at the argument, which is the second or the last. So it's pretty straightforward. Now we take that, we open it with the write permission. All right, moving on. So let me just. All right, now this is looping through every argument, so that means every file. Now for every file, we open it with read only. We also define a buffer, which is the max length, so we don't do anything crazy. Now, as previously defined, we are pretty much writing the contents of that file into that buffer. And from there, we are putting that into output. So pretty straightforward. We're doing that in increments of the size of the buffer, at which point we close, we close the input, then we go back to the for loop, and then we go to the next file. At that point, we keep doing that, and we'll keep putting the contents of file one after another, one after another. And this is where we start with the printing out of the final compiled appended file. So it just closes the output, but then here it's kind of not very smart, but it's opening again. This is opening a file with a name for like a variable name for print, and it's opening the output file, but this time with read only. So that's the difference. Earlier it's opened with write because we're writing to it, but now we're trying to read its contents. We define a buffer, arbitrary length, or not arbitrary, it is the max length that we defined at the top. And from here, we are reading its contents, putting it into the buffer, and then putting that buffer's content one by one into standard output. So that's to the terminal or the CLI. And then once that's all done, we close out the file. So with that done, or all said and done, here is the compilation. Perfect. Now I will be appending the same files. So it's test1 and test2, both same content. Then I will put it into a file called results.txt. So you can see here, it's printing out the total appended file. And let's just say I open results.txt. There, perfect. And that's all.